Okay, so we'll make a start, beginning with setting correct motivation for the sort of session, and then do the dedication prayers based on this motivation, and listen to the teachings with this motivation. So we completed the sort of introduction, the homage, the promise to compose, and the how to listen, and also the first of the three principal aspects of the path, renunciation. So tonight we're moving on to the second principal aspect of the path, bodhicitta. So we should always listen to Dharma teachings with a vast motivation of bodhicitta, thinking we're going to receive these teachings and put them into practice to become a Buddhist benefit all sentient beings. But then when we listen to the Mahayana Dharma, the teachings of the great Shakyamuni Buddha, especially teachings on emptiness and teachings on bodhicitta, these we really need to emphasize this Mahayana motivation, this bodhicitta motivation. Because we can listen to teachings, we can listen to teachings on renunciation and even on emptiness with a kind of motivation of self-liberation. But listening to these teachings on bodhicitta with the motivation of self-liberation isn't very productive and isn't going to really cause us to put these teachings into practice and actualize the result. So in that way, think I'm going to receive these teachings on what is bodhicitta, how to develop bodhicitta, and how to know when we've developed bodhicitta. So we can become a Buddha to liberate all sentient beings. And with that in mind, and begin with the prayers. So thinking that in the space in front of us is Shakyamuni Buddha, with uh, the sort of refuge field, as we've discussed previously. Thinking that Shakyamuni Buddha is there in front with the lineage gurus stacked above him, and to his right are the masters of the method, the lineage of methods such as Maitreya, Sangha, and so on. To his left are the masters of the lineages of wisdom such as Manjushri, Nagarjuna, and so on. And then below him are the Buddhas, Bodhisattvas, Dharma protectors, and so on. Then surrounding ourselves is all sentient beings in the aspect of humans. And think to liberate them, we're going to lead them in making these prayers. We recite the prayers to Shakyamuni Buddha 3 times. Guru, teacher, Bhagavan, Tathagata, Arhat, perfectly complete Buddha, perfect in knowledge and good conduct, Sugata, know of the world, supreme guide of beings to be subdued, teacher of gods and humans, Chi Buddha Bhagavan, glorious conqueror, Shakyamuni, I prostrate, make offerings and go for refuge. Guru, teacher, Bhagavan, Tathagata, Arhat, perfectly complete Buddha, perfect in knowledge and good conduct, Sugata, know of the world, supreme guide of beings to be subdued, teacher of gods and humans, to you, Buddha Bhagavan, glorious conqueror Shakyamuni, and prostrate, make offerings, and go for refuge. Guru, teacher, Bhagavan, Tathagata, Arhat, perfect complete Buddha, perfect in knowledge and good conduct, Sugata, know of the world, supreme guide of beings to be subdued, teacher of gods and humans, to you, Buddha Bhagavan, glorious conqueror Shakyamuni, I prostrate, make offerings, and go for refuge. Then recite the mantra of Shakyamuni Buddha 3 times. Tayatha Om Tayatha Om Muni Muni Mahamuni Mahamunaye Soha. Tayatha Om Muni Muni Mahamuni Mahamunaye Soha. Tayatha Om Muni Muni Mahamuni Mahamunaye Soha. And then recite the praise to the perfection of wisdom 1 time. The inexpressible, inconceivable, indescribable perfection of wisdom, unproduced, unceasing, the nature of space, object of the uniquely knowing transcendental wisdom, to the mother of victorious ones at 3 times I prostrate. It's like the mantra of Prajnaparamita 3 times. Tayathao Om Gati Gati Paragati Samgati Puri Soha. Tayathao Om Gati Gati Paragati Parasamgati Bodhi Soha. Tayathao Om Gati Gati Paragati Parasamgati Bodhi Soha. And we'll offer the mandala. Oh, Sashibo Ki Yoshi Meto Traviali Nirengembadi Sangye Shindu Mikte Owai Lokuna Dojina Chopasho Jetsun Lama Dampa Yenam Ki Choku Kala Kien Se Shu Zin Tree Jita Sampe Duje Zimala Zavye Choki Chapa Vatu So Idam Kuratna Mandala Kamya Tayami. Then take refuge, thinking that the Buddha was the supreme teacher, the Dharma is the supreme methods for liberation, and the Sangha is the supreme support on the path. Sangye Chodam Soni Chodam La Jansho Patu Dagi Kyapsu Chi Dagi Jinso Kipe Sonam Ki Dwala Panche Sangye Rupa Sho Sangye Chodam Soni Chodam La Jansho Patu Dagi Kyapsu Chi Dagi Jinso Kipe Sonam Ki Dwala Panche Sangye Rupa Sho Sangye Chodam Soni Chodam La Jancho Balu Rani Kapsu Chi Taki Jinso Gipe Sonam Gi Dola Penshir Sangye Rupa Sho. Okay, so with this motivation in mind, today we'll cover the second section of the text. So just to recap what we've discussed previously, we've talked about how we need to develop renunciation for samsara. Without wishing to be free of samsara, we cannot progress on the path because we have no motivation to practice. Without this mind wishing to be free from samsara, we're perpetually stuck in samsara. But then talking about renunciation, it's not just enough to think, okay, I want to be free, so I'm going to run away, give up everything, abandon my clothes, abandon my loved ones, abandon my job, anything like that. As Kendall, I was saying last week, early in the week, we need to see the benefits of this human existence, the freedom and endowments, and the temporariness of everything. So, okay, we're in the nature of suffering. but also we have temporary happiness. And while it's temporary, we still kind of need this happiness when we can have it. So thinking in this way that the body is a guest house, the mind is a bardo, it's a temporary state, constantly changing, we're removed from attachment to them. And without attachment, it means we can enjoy these things, but not grasp to them being inherent. In that way, you can also think, I can enjoy them now, but I know they're going to end, and that's not a problem. And that's also a sense of renunciation developed. So then moving on with the text, the next verse, the verse 6, the purpose of generating the mind of enlightenment in Prabhupada Rinpoche's outlines, says, even if renunciation has been developed, if it is not possessed by the mind of enlightenment, it does not become the cause of the perfect bliss of unsurpassed enlightenment. Therefore, the wise generate the supreme mind of enlightenment. So here, what Sangha is talking about here is the view in the Mahayana is that arhats can, or without bodhicitta, you cannot become a Buddha. You can reach the state of an arhat, and that's kind of it. It ends there, and they abide in this nirvana with remainder. And they abide in this state until the Buddha arouses bodhicitta in them. Then they progress along, the moment bodhicitta is aroused in their mind by a Buddha, they enter the bodhisattva path. And then they quickly progress because they've got all the realizations of emptiness according to the individual liberation vehicle. So in this way, then very rapidly progress along the path, and then you just have to put that final bit of work in to become a fully enlightened Buddha. So Chandrakirti says in the Majjhimika Avatara, the ornament in the middle way, he says, Shrivakas are middle-level Buddhas arise from sovereign sages. Buddhas are born from bodhisattvas. The compassionate mind and non-dual cognition, as well as the awakening mind, these are the causes of bodhisattvas. So here, Shrivakas are middle-level Buddhas refers to the vehicles of healers, so the arhats, and the vehicles of pratyeka Buddhas, the people, the solitary realizers. So in this way, they attain liberation, or they attain that state through the accumulation of vast amounts of merit and renunciation and practice. But most importantly, the Buddha arises from the Bodhisattva, and the Bodhisattva arises from great compassion. That's the key essential point here. As it says, the compassionate mind and non-dual cognition, as well as the awakening mind, these are the causes of bodhisattvas. So we're saying compassion isn't enough. We need the awakening mind of bodhicitta, this wish to liberate beings and the intention to liberate beings. And non-dual cognition refers to the realization of emptiness, because that's how you become a bodhisattva, is with the two. Yeah, it says as well as compassion alone is accepted to be the seed of the perfect harvest of Buddhahood, the water that nourishes it, and the fruit that is the long source of enjoyment. I will praise compassion at the start of all. So that's verse 1 and 2 of Chandrakirti's entering the middle way. And you can see there he's really emphasizing the importance of compassion when you enter the Mahayana vehicle. So we can consider that verse explained very briefly, but there's not a lot of elaboration to go into. So then the next verse, verse 7, says, swept away by the current of the four powerful rivers, tied by the tight bonds of karma, so hard to undo, caught in the iron net of self-grasping, completely enveloped by the total darkness of ignorance. So the four powerful rivers, these are the rivers of the sufferings of birth, suffering of aging, suffering of sickness, and suffering of death. So then we're constantly undergoing them. It says it's through the other power. It's explained very clearly in the lesson. Rather than being our own power, is swept away by the power of the afflictions, basically. These sufferings, we don't have control over our life in samsara. We just move from being born, we age, we get sick, and we die. There's no control. It's going to happen to us. Whereas like Buddhas and high-level bodhisattvas who have realizations and complete control, and they can influence this, and they can say survive, extend their lifespan as needed and avoid sickness as needed and so on. And then tied by tight bonds of karma, so hard to undo, refers to how we're bound by our karma. We covered last time how karma is definite and karma is increasing. So in this way, our karma is definite, and because our karma is definite, we're bound to suffer due to all the negative karma we've accumulated. And in fact, any karma is going to keep us in cyclic existence. Because even until we have the realization of emptiness, even virtuous karma we generate is contaminated by grasping at self. So in the final two lines, the iron net of self-grasping, completely enveloped in the total darkness of ignorance. So this refers to the two levels of self-grasping. The first, this iron net of self-grasping, is the acquired self-grasping. So this is like things we have learned and been taught, tenet systems, for example. If you were raised Christian, for example, and you believe there's a inherently existing soul or an eternal soul, those kind of things. Or if you believe in a creator God, these are all acquired ignorance. So this is why it's an iron net of self-grasping. So it's an iron net because you can't escape. It's very difficult to escape. But these holes, you can kind of use logic to get through it a lot easier. And then the final line is completely enveloped by the total darkness of ignorance, is the innate self-grasping. This is the grasping of an inherently existent self which keeps us trapped in samsara. And it's, the darkness because we cannot see the light of Buddhahood. It's almost like being in a dark room. You don't know what's going on at all. You can't see things, and because of that, you misunderstand reality. So this ignorance causes a complete misapprehension of reality. So we can see already, once again, Lam Tsongkhapa is emphasizing the suffering of samsara in these general sufferings, the impact of karma, and also the importance of emptiness and how we need to have the right view to remove this ignorance which is causing us to suffer. So then verse 8 says, endlessly reborn in cyclic existence, ceaselessly tormented by the three sufferings, thinking that all mothers are in such a condition, generate the supreme mind of enlightenment. So these two verses belong to the header of how to generate the mind of enlightenment. And this 8th verse is really the main method. So in this text, Lam Tsongkhapa is talking about the sevenfold cause and effect method. But you can also use Tonglen to develop bodhicitta. But generally speaking, it's said that the cause and effect method is easier to use and easier to develop. So starting off with endlessly reborn in cyclic existence. So this relates to the first of the first cause. If we think we've been endlessly reborn in cyclic existence, all sentient beings have been our mother. We've been constantly thrown around without control. And you might make connections with certain beings more than others, and you have a kind of uncommon karmic connection that causes you to be reborn together for life after life. But generally speaking, we've been reborn with all relations to all sentient beings since beginningless time. There's a quote here by Nagarjuna that says, if we divided this world into pieces the size of juniper berries, the number of these would not be as great as the number of times that each sentient being has been our mother. So then we move on to the next stage. So then from remembering or recognizing all these beings have been our mother, the second stage of the sevenfold cause and effect reasoning is remembering the kindness of the mother thinking about the kindness our mother's shown us from the time of conception, carrying and undergoing great pain and suffering while pregnant to carry us, feeding us, keeping us alive, keeping us clothed, all these very important things from birth, basically. And sometimes people have difficult relationships with their mother, especially more so in the West. Um, so you can think in some ways, Lambs on Kappa were speaking to monks. So for these people, they probably didn't see, some of them won't have seen their mother since they were 7, or they'll have seen her occasionally, but they've lived in a monastery from a very young age. So they don't have the same kind of chance to develop these issues. They just have this distance. And it's all this looking back at childbirth and things. So even if you have like a difficult time with your mother in your teenage years or so on, you can still think back to the very beginning of pregnancy and childbirth. Or if that's still too difficult, you can just focus on another sentient being. All sentient beings have been our father, our grandfather, our grandmother, our aunt, our uncle, our brother, our sister, our children. You can just change the being we're talking in relation to. So it kind of works in that way. And then the third is developing, or it's referred to as the gratitude. Just developing this thankfulness for their kindness and thinking that we need to repay this kindness. Because you don't want to take advantage of someone. They've shown you all this kindness and you want to repay them for it. So that's where we move on to the fourth. And we develop love. And in this context, love is defined as the wish for others to be happy and have the causes of happiness. So then we're thinking, okay, all these sentient beings have been my mother since beginning of this lifetime. They've shown me great kindness, and I want to repay this great kindness. And next, what I will do then to make this happen is I'll cause them to have happiness. And then think, okay, what happiness will I give them? I'll give them worldly happiness. You start off by thinking worldly happiness. Food, things to drink, nice clothes, anything in samsara that's pleasant. And then we think about this tormented by the 3 sufferings. The 3 types of suffering. The second line of Lamson Kappa's 8th verse, ceaselessly tormented by the 3 sufferings. The suffering of suffering, the suffering of impermanence, and the all-pervasive compounded form of suffering. So then you think, okay, I want them to have happiness, but that's not quite enough because they're undergoing the suffering of impermanence. So this happiness will end, and that will cause them to suffer. So then we move on to the next step and we develop compassion. And compassion is defined as the wish for others to be free of suffering and the causes of suffering. So we can see here, we want to expand our aim. We're not just thinking about. So you can think, starting off again, very basic, and think about worldly suffering. Hunger, thirst, too hot, too cold, physical pain from the body, and so on. You don't want your mother to experience that, so you focus on that. And then from there, you think about the suffering of impermanence, losing the things that are good, and, sickness, aging, death, those kind of parts of impermanence too. And then finally, we come along to the most important aspect of suffering to be meditated upon. And that's the suffering, the all-pervasive compounded form of suffering. So that then we need to consider. There is no sort of anywhere in samsara that is free from suffering. It's constantly undergoing birth, aging, sickness, and death due to having contaminated aggregates. There's all this suffering because of that. So worldly happiness isn't enough. We need this super mundane, this extraordinary happiness. And what happiness is that? That's the happiness of liberation, total freedom from afflictions. So when we think, we wish for them to be like that. We're developing at this point, it's all aspirational. I will make all these mother sentient beings happy. I wish they were happy. I wish they didn't suffer. And then that develops in the sixth cause, the responsibility. And that's thinking, okay, it's not enough that I wish it. I can't just sit here and think, oh, it'd be lovely if my mother was happy and free of suffering. Because just wishing it isn't enough. That's not going to make her happy and free from suffering. What can we do that will make her happy and free from suffering? That's what we're doing. We're thinking, okay, it's not enough just to wish it. I'm now going to do it. I'm now going to ensure she has worldly happiness and freedom from worldly suffering and extraordinary happiness and the freedom from the all-pervasive compounded form of suffering. And then this sixth cause leads to the seventh, which is the effect. So it can either be called the sevenfold cause and effect method or the six cause and one effect method. So this final one, the effect, is bodhicitta. Thinking to ourselves, okay, right now I cannot free all these mother sentient beings from the all-pervasive compounded form of suffering. I cannot liberate them from samsara as I am as a human. How can I do that? Well, a Buddha can do that. Therefore, I will become a Buddha to benefit and liberate these mother sentient beings. And by meditating like that, we develop bodhicitta. So then we'll just briefly cover the definition of having generated the mind of enlightenment. So this verse was added by Pabonka Rinpoche. It's not actually found in Lama Tsongkhapa's original letter. So here Pabonka Rinpoche said, in short, if like a mother whose cherished son has fallen into a pit of fire and who experiences even 1 second of his suffering as an unbearable eternity, your reflection on the suffering of all mother sentient beings has made it impossible for you to bear the suffering for even 1 second, and the wish seeking enlightenment for their sake arises without effort. And then you have realized the supreme precious mind of enlightenment. So you can kind of see here, Pabonka Rinpoche is talking about how bodhicitta is effortless. When we have a realization, it's got to be uncontrived and effortless. That's what he's saying about bodhicitta here. So I'm not totally clear on why Lama Tsongkhapa didn't include a verse of how you knew you've generated this mind of enlightenment. I can only imagine it's because it's quite apparent. You'll feel in your heart when you've developed this mind of enlightenment. You see the great lineage masters who developed bodhicitta, like His Holiness the Dalai Lama. And whenever he just thinks about the suffering of mother sentient beings, he starts to weep. So, Pabonka Rinpoche's verse is in complete accordance with this. And we can see in the lineage that's how it is. I think it's because it's a heartfelt feeling. You'll know it's there. So then we'll do a brief meditation in the sevenfold cause and effect method. But before we do that, I just wanted to very briefly discuss the Mani mantra, because I remember Tenzin requested a little explanation. So the Mani mantra, or the mantra of Chenrezig, Om Mani Padme Hum, has a huge number of explanations. It can be explained in an incredibly profound number of ways. So Mani refers to jewel. This is a jewel, a wish-fulfilling jewel. And Geshe Tashi Tsering, or Tensur Rinpoche Geshe Tashi Tsering, he explained that the jewel it's referring to here is bodhicitta. Because bodhicitta, as is said in other texts, is the precious jewel which transforms this body into that of a Buddha. I can't remember which text. I think it's by Lama Tsongkhapa that quote comes from, but I can't remember where. Well, it's not quite like that, but so it's bodhicitta the jewel. And then the Manikabam, this compilation of texts on the Mani Mantra, basically. Uh, it, it's almost it's not necessarily a term, but it's not quite it's like a true revealed teaching in a way, as the text kind of appeared one day in Tibet. And it was one of the first texts in Tibet. It kind of, it appeared to Songtsen Gampo, the first king of Tibet, and then different termers have revealed it again and again. So there's a bit here where he says, so just as a brief bit of background, Songtsen Gampo was the first Buddhist king of Tibet. He married the Nepalese and the Chinese princesses, built temples in Lhasa, like one that became the Jokan and Ramache, and he got these very famous self-risen statues of Chenrezig. One came from China, one came from Nepal. So in that way, he had a very strong connection with Chenrezig, and Tibet has a very strong association with Chenrezig. But this text says, so you can relate the mantra to the six perfections. So Om relates to the practice of generosity, Ma to the perfection of discipline, Ni to patience, then Pe to perseverance, or Me refers to meditation, and Hung refers to the perfection of wisdom. So then it's also said that because these perfections, relate, it can all be related. So you have the six perfections, but you can also relate to the six realms. So Om purifies pride and the seed of rebirth in the God realm. Ma purifies envy and the seed of rebirth as a demigod, an asura. Ni purifies desire and this causes and the seeds of rebirth as a human. Pe purifies ignorance and the seeds of rebirth as an animal. Me purifies miserliness or stinginess and the cause of rebirth as a hungry ghost. And Hung purifies anger, the cause or the seed to be reborn in the hell realms. So, this mantra has been highly praised by countless masters of the past. So, in that way, it's very important, it's very beneficial to recite the Mani Mantra. There's a sort of saying in Tibet that reciting the Mani Mantra 100 or 1,000 times is equivalent to reciting the entire Kagyu, the collected teachings of the Buddha. 10,000 times closes the doors to rebirth in the lower realms. 1,000,000 times causes one to reach the level of an irreversible bodhisattva. And 10 million times leads to perfect Buddhahood. So whether it's like that, I don't quite know, but it's a very powerful mantra. Because if you really meditate properly on bodhicitta while reciting the mantra, it generates the conventional and ultimate bodhicitta. So if you ever want to recite the mantra, if you have the empowerment of Chenrezig, you visualize yourself as Chenrezig, the mantra at your heart, and then light rays radiate out. You can think about the colors. So white Om, so white light comes from Om. Yeah. Then Ma is green. Ni is yellow. Pa is pale, like a light blue. Me is red. And Hung is a dark blue. And this light radiates and purifies all of samsara. The same purifications we've just discussed have applied. You can do them to yourself and all sentient beings in that way by reciting the mantra. So now, before we end today, we'll do a very brief meditation on the sevenfold cause and effect method. So just sitting comfortably, start off by relaxing the mind and bringing a little bit of concentration by meditating on the breath or whichever object you prefer for chanting. Okay, so from there, think about your mother in this life, or someone who's shown you great kindness and cared for you. And just kind of do this in two different ways. You can either focus on first thinking of the kindness of the mother in this life, and then progressing on to how we've been our relations to all sentient beings. But we'll follow the sort of more tradition, the written method, and start by thinking how long we've been trapped in samsara, and therefore we've been our relation to all sentient beings. And then with that in mind, think about the kindness that the mother of this life has shown you. And then from there, think how all these other sentient beings have shown you the same kindness again and again. And then think how you want to repay this kindness and how much kindness they've shown you and how you want to repay it, and you don't want to be like selfish. Mm. You want to thank them. And then based on this, we generate love, the wish for them to have happiness. Think how you want all these other sentient beings to have happiness and its causes. And then think how these more sentient beings are trapped in samsara and undergoing the three kinds of suffering. And then from there, we develop compassion, thinking, I wish they, these more sentient beings, were free of suffering and all of its causes. And then from this, we develop a special intention to think, well, wishing isn't going to do it. This isn't enough. I'm going to actually place all my non-sentient beings in a state of happiness and its causes and free from suffering and all its causes. And then we think, okay, right now I cannot do this. I don't have the ability to fully liberate beings. I might be able to give advice and help in a worldly manner. I cannot truly free them from the all pervasive compounded form of suffering. To do that, I need to become a Buddha. So I know the effortlessly and spontaneously know the method best suited to liberate each individual sentient being. So we then develop bodhicitta, this thought that I'm going to become a fully enlightened Buddha so I can liberate all these mother sentient beings. And then with that motivation, we'll recite a Mala of the Mani mantra. So either visualizing Chenrezig in the space in front, if in the sky above you, or if you've received the initiation of Chenrezig, whether if you've received the Wang of Thousand Arm Chenrezig, or the Jainan of Four Arm Chenrezig on the previous, having previously received a Wang of Four Arm of a Thousand Arm Chenrezig or higher, so if you've just received a Jainan but no Wang, you cannot self-generate. But if you received the Wang and then the Jainan, you can. So in this way, you visualize Chenrezig and recite the mantra of Chenrezig, Om Mani Padme Hum. Om Mani Padme Hum, Om Mani Padme Hum, Om Mani Padme Hum, Om Mani Padme Hum. Om Mani Padme Hum, Om Mani Padme Hum, Om Mani Padme Hum. And then think that if you visualize a Chenrezig in front, he dissolves into the crown of yourself and all sentient beings and blesses them. So with that, we'll then dedicate the merit we've accumulated. So let's get hands up. So may whatever virtue I have collected benefit the teachings and all my earthly beings, and in particular may it cause the essence of perfect pure love and Dharma's teachings to shine forever. Đang vì vì khối sinh tham số phân đan đểว่ามาลูจงเวนีเช่นเวสิวังทันซิงอยากโซยจะเพสิเทปาดูแทงยูจี Nation sampan poche make panam kekuchi keban yamba mepan gong ye gong du pelwa sho Chanjo sencho rinpoche make panam kekuchi keban yamba mepan gong ye gong du pelwa sho Tony tawa rinpoche make panam kekuchi keban yamba mepan gong ye gong du pelwa sho as long as space remains, as long as my greatest remain, till may too remain, the spell is suffering of my greatest. Thank you. I just realised we didn't pause for questions, so if there are any, we can maybe take a moment now. Otherwise, we can finish there.
Yes, I do have a few questions.
Yeah, let's go for it.
So, while we recite the Mani Mantra, what should we think about?
So you should think. So you should think about this bodhicitta. So the meditate, especially at the end of meditation, like we did there, where you've done the sevenfold cause and effect meditation first, reciting it there, but also this way of thinking about yourself as Chenrezig or Chenrezig in the space in front. You visualize the mantra either at your heart or at Chenrezig's heart in the colors that we've discussed. This is the same color you'll see the paintings of the Mani Mantra in. And from each syllable, light radiates out. And the light from each syllable purifies the affliction, the related affliction, like discussed, and purifies the seeds of rebirth in the particular realm associated with that syllable. So then you visualize the light from Chenrezig fills all sentient beings. And if you've not received the initiation yourself, it also fills you. And does that make sense, Tenzin?
Yes, it does. Thank you. And another question I had is I heard on multiple occasions a distinction between what was it, conventional and ultimate bodhicitta.
Yes.
And yeah, I'd like to know about this.
So conventional bodhicitta refers to the bodhicitta based on great compassion that we discussed today. The ultimate bodhicitta refers to the right view of emptiness, because it's the mind of enlightenment, bodhicitta. So the mind of enlightenment is twofold. The mind of a Buddha has great compassion and the right view of emptiness. So in the same way, the conventional aspect is this compassion, and the ultimate aspect is the right view of emptiness.
Okay, right, because I was just about to say, isn't it isn't it sometimes complicated to, when meditating on emptiness, generate a compassionate feeling for other sentient beings, because we feel that they don't exist from their own side, and so yeah, their suffering seems to be non-existent
Yeah,
in
but
some way.
what you have to be careful not to fall into the extreme of nihilism.
Mm,
And you've got to remember there's a conventional being that suffers. You know, they they suffer because the fifth Dalai Lama in his Medicine Buddha Siddhana has a generation of bodhicitta that says all sentient beings are dharmakaya by nature. Um, oh, so I have to check later, but basically what he says is they're dharmakaya by nature, but they don't realize this, and this is why they suffer.
mm,
So actually, when you meditate on emptiness correctly, free from the two extremes, your bodhicitta should increase because you see how this ignorance is the cause of suffering.
right.
Then you see also, you start to see the interdependence of phenomena, how everything depends on each other, and you can develop this increased realization that you need to help other beings because they're suffering due to ignorance.
Right.
So because of this, you're as you develop a more and more right view, and you start to think, okay, things don't exist inherently, but they still exist conventionally. They exist by way of mere imputation, and they're dependently arisen, so they exist by way of cause and effect. It's just the way we think they exist isn't correct.
Mm,
We think things exist from their own side. We think you grasp to a strong iron mind. That's what causes us to suffer. But once you break down the strong I and mine, you stop being self-centered and you have a more open heart to all sentient beings. And you see that there's a kind of interconnectedness almost of these cause and effect relationships.
wow, yes, yes, it really makes sense with this quote from His Holiness the Dalai Lama.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and it's actually said that the less intelligent bodhisattvas realize emptiness before they realize bodhicitta.
Oh,
So, because to realize emptiness is comparatively easy. You just have to develop a bit of calm abiding and then apply the right logic, and that's it. And whereas bodhicitta takes longer, it's a heartfelt feeling. You cannot logic your way into compassion.
mm,
You've just got to train your mind. So bodhisattvas actually, it's said that these bodhisattvas, their compassion grows because of their realization of emptiness.
okay. And do you know of some signs that someone walks the right way to the realization of bodhicitta? Such some signs that we have are making progress towards it.
Um, so you can look at the sort of masters of lineage, I suppose. I think that's maybe the best way to think about it. If you develop sort of genuine bodhicitta, you cannot bear to see. This is what Prabhupada Rinpoche was saying. You cannot bear to see sentient beings suffer. So when you begin and you maybe make a little bit of progress, you cannot bear to see them suffer in the ordinary sense. You cannot bear to see any sentient being undergoing the suffering of suffering. And then as you get a little bit more developed, you probably cannot bear to see them undergo the suffering of change because you're seeing how this is causing them to suffer. And then finally, it's about not being able to bear to see any sentient being suffer because of this all-pervasive compounded form of suffering due to uncontaminated aggregates. So thinking that actually, while they think they're happy, you're aware that they're actually suffering still because they're ignorant, and you cannot bear to see them like that because you know it's going to cause them to suffer in the future. Um, yes, like His Holiness cries when he thinks about the suffering of all sentient beings. That's meant to be the simplest way. But at the moment, it becomes more and more effortless with practice, and that's how you know the realization. You're very certain because you just don't have to even think about it anymore. You just have that feeling.
Well, thank you so much for answering the questions and teaching again.
That's okay.
Um,
If that's all your questions, we'll finish there for tonight.
yes, I think I'm done. Thank you.
Thank you, Kenzima. So